She never expected the stranger. She helped to become the only man who truly saw her. Welcome to True Soul Narratives, where every story carries a heartbeat. Love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the courage to start again. If this story resonates with you, subscribe and leave a like. Now, let's return to the story. The art gallery glowed with soft, golden light. Expensive, elegant. The kind of place where champagne flowed and critics whispered behind their hands about which pieces would shape the next generation. Grace Mitchell stood in front of one of her own paintings. 32 years old, simple black dress, hair pulled back, trying to look confident while her heart hammered against her ribs. This was her show, her work, her moment. Critics circled like sharks, some nodding approvingly, others studying her canvases with that careful, calculated look that could mean praise or devastation. Cameras flashed, journalists asked questions. Gallery patrons sipped wine and discussed her use of color, her emotional depth, her raw vulnerability captured on canvas. Grace felt like she was floating, like this couldn't be real, like she might wake up any second back in her tiny cafe uniform, dreaming about a life that would never be hers. Then someone approached from behind, footsteps quiet on the polished floor, a presence she felt before she heard. "You finally stopped hiding." The voice, that voice. Grace turned, and her breath caught in her throat, completely caught. It was him, Adam. But he was different, completely, utterly different. Gone were the torn clothes and the weathered face. Now he stood before her in an expensive tailored suit, charcoal gray, perfect fit. His hair was cut, clean shaven, confident presence radiating from him like he owned not just the room but the entire world. "Adam?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand. You were—" He smiled, that same gentle smile she remembered from cold Seattle mornings. But now it carried something else, something she couldn't name. "Homeless? Broken?" He stepped closer. "I was, until you showed me I was worth saving." Grace's eyes filled with tears, instantly, helplessly. "Who are you, really?" Adam's smile widened. "The same man you gave coffee to every morning. Just finally myself again." 6 months ago, Grace Mitchell thought she was invisible. Actually invisible. She was 32 years old, working as a barista at a small cafe in Seattle. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., she'd unlock the doors. Every morning, she'd brew the first pot of coffee. Every morning, she'd go through the motions of a life that didn't feel like hers. Grace was an artist, or she had been, once, before she'd let that dream die quietly in the back of her closet. She had talent, real talent, the kind that art professors in college had called exceptional and profound, the kind that had made her believe, truly believe, that she could make a living creating beauty. But talent doesn't pay rent, doesn't quiet the voice in your head that it says you're foolish, doesn't silence the person you're engaged to when they tell you to be realistic. Derek Hammond, 35, successful lawyer, the kind of man who looked perfect on paper, stable, wealthy, ambitious. He'd proposed to Grace when she was 28, 4 years ago. She'd said yes because it seemed like the responsible thing to do, the adult thing, the thing that meant she'd finally figured out her life. Art is a nice hobby, Grace, but it's not a career. Derek had said that so many times it became a mantra, a truth she'd accepted without question. So Grace stopped painting, stopped dreaming, stopped being herself. Derek controlled everything. Where they lived, a modern apartment downtown that Grace found cold but Derek loved. Who they saw, his colleagues, his friends, his world. What she did with her time. "Don't waste money on art supplies. We're saving for the wedding." The wedding that kept getting pushed back. One more year, just one more year. He needed to make partner first, needed to establish himself, needed Grace to be patient. Her artwork sat in the back of their closet, hidden, gathering dust, unseen, just like Grace. She worked at the cafe, went home to Derek, made dinner, listened to him talk about cases and clients, and the partnership he was chasing. Went to bed, woke up, repeated, every single day, until that rainy November morning. It was 6 a.m., still dark, Seattle rain coming down in sheets. Grace was opening the cafe early, prepping for the morning rush, when she saw him. A man huddled in the doorway, homeless. That was obvious. His clothes were soaked through, torn jacket, no umbrella, no protection from the cold rain that had been falling all night. He was shivering, actually shivering. But he wasn't begging, wasn't asking for anything, just sitting there with his back against the brick wall, trying to make himself small, trying to disappear. Grace's manager arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at the man and her face hardened. Call security. We can't have him scaring customers. Grace stared at the man through the window. He was around 35, weathered face, but there was something about him. Something in the way he held himself, dignity despite circumstance, like he was more than his situation. Grace, did you hear me? Call security. But Grace didn't call security. Instead, she poured a large coffee, made a breakfast sandwich, ham, egg, cheese, still warm, and she walked outside into the rain. The man looked up when she approached, startled, like he'd been invisible for so long he'd forgotten people could see him. I'm not supposed to do this, Grace said, her voice soft. But you look like you need it. She held out the coffee and sandwich. The man just stared. His eyes, piercing blue despite the exhaustion, searched her face like he was trying to understand why. Why would someone do this? What did she want? Why? His voice was hoarse, rough from disuse or cold or both. Because everyone deserves kindness. He took the coffee, then the sandwich. His hands were shaking, not just from cold, from emotion. Thank you. The words came out choked, raw. Grace smiled. What's your name? Adam. I'm Grace. That was the beginning, that simple exchange, that small act of kindness. Grace started bringing Adam food every morning, coffee and breakfast before she opened the cafe. They'd talk, just a few minutes. But those minutes became the only part of Grace's day that felt real. Adam had been on the streets for 8 months. He didn't talk about how he got there. Not at first, just that he'd lost everything. Lost himself. But he was educated, articulate. He asked about Grace's life, really asked, really listened. No one had done that in years. If you're hooked on this story and need to know how a homeless man and an invisible woman saved each other, hit that subscribe button right now. We share powerful stories about love that sees beyond the surface, transformation that changes everything, and the courage to finally be yourself. Don't miss what happens next. Here's a question for you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Like you were living someone else's dream instead of your own? Share your experience in the comments below. Every morning became the same, and yet completely different. Grace would arrive at the cafe at 5:45 a.m., before the manager, before anyone else, and Adam would be there, waiting in the doorway, not begging, not asking, just there. She'd bring him coffee, always black, 2 sugars. That's how he liked it, and a breakfast sandwich. Different kinds. She rotated, kept it interesting. They'd talk, really talk. Not the surface conversations Grace had with Derek, not the polite exchanges she had with customers, real conversations. About books, about the city, about life. Adam was educated. That became clear quickly. He referenced literature, philosophy, history. He spoke with the careful precision of someone who'd once moved in very different circles. One morning as rain pattered around them, Adam looked at her carefully. You seem sad, like you're carrying something heavy. Grace forced a smile, the smile she'd perfected over 4 years. I'm fine, engaged, good job. Life is good. Your eyes tell a different story. The words hit her like a slap. Not cruel, just true. Painfully, devastatingly true. Grace looked away. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. She did. Of course she did. But admitting it meant acknowledging that everything she'd built her life around was wrong. Adam was the first person in years to really look at her, to see past the performance, past the smile, past the I'm fine, befürchte. And that terrified her. Derek found out about Adam 3 weeks in. Grace had been careful, using her own money, small amounts, nothing noticeable, but Derek noticed everything. He tracked their finances like a forensic accountant. Every dollar, every cent. You're wasting money on a homeless man? His voice was cold, sharp, the tone he used in court when he was going for the kill. Grace was making dinner, chopping vegetables. Her hands froze. It's just coffee and a sandwich. That's our wedding fund you're throwing away. It's $5 a day, Derek. It's the principle. He slammed his hand on the counter. Made Grace jump. You don't make decisions without consulting me. We're a team, Grace. Teams communicate. But they weren't a team. Grace knew that. They were a hierarchy, and she was at the bottom. I'm sorry, she said, the words automatic, practiced. You're right. I should have asked. Derek's face softened, slightly. I just want what's best for us. You understand that, right? I understand. That night, Grace lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Derek snored beside her, content, secure in his control. But the next morning, Grace still brought Adam his coffee. She just hid it better. Because for those few minutes every morning, Grace felt like herself, like someone who mattered, like someone who existed. The morning Grace's sketchbook fell out of her bag changed everything. She'd been carrying it with her, had started sketching again on her breaks, nothing serious, just doodles, little drawings to keep her hands busy. When she handed Adam his coffee, her bag tipped. The sketchbook tumbled out, pages fluttering open. Adam caught it. His eyes landed on the drawings. Grace's heart stopped. She lunged for it. That's nothing, just, you drew these? Adam's voice was quiet, awed. Grace's face burned with embarrassment. It's nothing, just doodles. Adam ignored her. He was studying the pages, really studying them. His fingers traced the lines of a sketch. A woman's face, sad eyes, beautiful but hollow. These aren't doodles. He looked up at her. These are extraordinary. You have real talent, Grace. No one had said that to her in years, years. Grace's eyes welled up, suddenly, helplessly. My fiancé says art is a waste of time. Adam's expression hardened, his jaw clenched. Something dark flickered in his eyes. Then your fiancé is a fool. Grace laughed, a wet, broken sound. He's practical, realistic. He's blind. Adam handed the sketchbook back carefully. Don't stop drawing, Grace. Please, the world needs beauty, and you create it. Grace held the sketchbook against her chest, her heart pounding, her throat tight. Someone saw her, really saw her, and it wasn't the man she was supposed to marry. Over the next few weeks, Grace opened up in ways she hadn't in years. She told Adam about her dreams. The ones she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. She'd wanted to be a professional artist, have gallery shows, see her work hanging on walls where people could experience it, feel it. What stopped you? Adam asked one morning. Life. Grace wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. My parents died in a car accident when I was 25. Drunk driver. They were just gone. I'm sorry. I met Derek at 28. I was lost, grieving. He seemed stable, safe, like he could anchor me when everything felt like it was falling apart. And slowly I gave up my dreams to fit his vision of our life. Grace's voice was hollow, empty. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Adam was quiet for a long moment, really listening, not rushing to fix, just present. It's not too late, he finally said. You can still be who you were meant to be. Grace laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You have nothing to lose. Exactly. Adam's voice was firm. I've lost everything. My career, my home, my identity, every single thing that defined me. And I can tell you, Grace, the worst loss isn't material things. It's losing yourself. That's the only loss you can't recover from. The words hung in the cold morning air. True, painful, undeniable. Grace looked at Adam, this homeless man who spoke like a philosopher, who saw her when no one else did. "Who were you?" she asked. "Before?" Adam's expression shuddered. Someone who had everything and nothing at the same time. He didn't elaborate, and Grace didn't push. Everything came to a head on a Tuesday morning. Grace was leaving the apartment early, 5:30 a.m. Derek was supposed to be asleep. But he wasn't. He'd followed her, watched her meet Adam, watched them talk and laugh, watched her hand him coffee and a bagel. When Grace got home that evening, Derek was waiting. His face was cold, furious. "It's him or me." Grace froze in the doorway. "What?" "The homeless man. It's him or me. Choose." "He's just a person who needs help." "He's a homeless man." Derek's voice rose, sharp, cutting. "You're making us look ridiculous. What will people think? What will my partners think? Us or you?" Grace's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. Derek's face went cold, colder than she'd ever seen. "Choose, Grace, now." Grace looked down at her left hand, at the engagement ring that suddenly felt like a shackle. Heavy, constricting, wrong. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow." Derek's voice was flat, final. "Him or me? Decide." He walked past her, into the bedroom, slammed the door. Grace stood in the living room, alone, her reflection staring back at her from the dark window. And she realized with sudden, terrible clarity, she'd already made her choice. She just hadn't admitted it yet. The next morning, Grace found Adam at his usual spot, but she looked different, broken. Her eyes were red, swollen. She'd been crying all night, hadn't slept, just stared at the ceiling while Derek snored beside her, oblivious to the fact that their relationship was already over. Adam took one look at her face and stood immediately. "What happened?" Grace's composure crumbled, completely crumbled. "Derek gave me an ultimatum. Stop helping you or he's done." Adam's face fell. His shoulders sagged. "Grace, I'm not worth losing your future over." "That's just it." Grace's voice broke. "I don't think he is my future. I think he's my prison." The words hung in the cold morning air. True, devastating, liberating. "I've been hiding who I am for years. Years, Adam." Tears streamed down her face now. "I stopped painting, stopped dreaming, stopped being myself. I became whatever Derek wanted me to be. Quiet, compliant, small." Her hands were shaking. Adam reached out, steadied them with his own. "And then you showed up." Grace looked at him, really looked at him. "And you're the only person who actually sees me. Not who I pretend to be. Not who Derek wants me to be. Just me." Adam was quiet for a long moment. His jaw worked. His eyes filled with something Grace couldn't name. Pain, guilt, understanding. "Grace, I haven't been completely honest with you." Her heart sank. "No, please, not him too." "What do you mean?" Adam took a breath, deep, steadying. "I wasn't always homeless. I had everything once. Career, money, status, all of it." Grace stared, waiting. "I was a high-powered investment banker. Managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions, worked 80-hour weeks, made more money in a year than most people see in a lifetime." "What happened?" "I burned out, completely burned out." His voice was hollow. "I had a breakdown, stopped sleeping, stopped eating, couldn't function. And then one day I just walked away from all of it." Grace's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because for the first time in my life, someone saw me as human." Adam's eyes locked onto hers, not as a job title, not as a bank account, not as someone who could do something for them, just me, just Adam. And I couldn't risk losing that. Grace understood. God, she understood completely. They were both hiding, both pretending, both trying to be seen for who they really were instead of what the world expected. Later that week, Grace mentioned something she'd seen online. A small local gallery was having an open call for artists. New talent, emerging voices. She'd looked at the submission guidelines a dozen times, but she'd been too afraid to actually do it. You should submit your work, Adam said simply. Grace laughed, bitter, scared. What's the point? They'll reject me, confirm what Derek always said, that I'm not good enough. Or they'll accept you. Adam's voice was firm, and you'll finally become who you're meant to be. Grace looked at him. This man who'd lost everything and somehow still believed in possibility. That night, after Derek fell asleep, Grace sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and submitted her portfolio. Her hands shook the entire time. Her heart pounded so hard she thought Derek might wake up from the sound. But she did it. She actually did it. And she didn't tell Derek. He found out anyway. 3 days later, Grace came home from work to find Derek sitting at the table, her laptop open, the confirmation email on the screen. What is this? Grace's blood ran cold. Obedient. Derek, I told you to give up this art nonsense. His voice was sharp, furious. I told you it was a waste of time. It's not nonsense. Grace's own voice rose. Years of silence breaking. It's who I am. You're my fiancé. That's who you are. Grace looked at him, really looked at him. This man who thought he owned her, who thought love meant control. I don't love you anymore. The words came out quiet, true, final. Maybe I never did. Derek's face went red, purple. After everything I've done for you. You mean after everything you have controlled about me? Grace pulled the engagement ring off her finger, set it on the table between them. I'm done, Derek. You're nothing without me. He stood, towering, trying to intimidate. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. No, I won't. Derek grabbed his keys, stormed toward the door, stopped, turned back. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. The biggest mistake was saying yes to you in the first place. He slammed the door so hard the wall shook, and Grace stood there, alone, free, terrified, live. The next morning, Grace went to find Adam, to tell him everything, to share her liberation. But he wasn't there. His usual spot was empty, just concrete, just rain. Grace's heart dropped. She searched the surrounding blocks, asked other homeless people if they'd seen him. No one had. Days passed, no sign of Adam. Grace felt like she'd been gutted. He'd disappeared right when she needed him most. Right when she'd finally been brave enough to choose herself. Had she scared him away? Was he protecting her from the fallout with Derek? Or had he simply moved on? She'd never even gotten his phone number. Never known where he went during the days. He'd just been there every morning, and now he was gone. Then the gallery called. Ms. Mitchell, we'd like to feature 3 of your pieces in our group show next month. The emotional depth, the raw vulnerability, it's exactly what we're looking for. Grace should have been thrilled. She was thrilled. This was everything she dreamed of. But all she could think was, Adam isn't here to share this with me. Grace moved out of Derek's apartment the next week, found a tiny studio on the other side of the city, barely furnished, 1 room with a kitchen alcove and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it was hers, completely hers. She painted every day. Real art, emotional, honest, pieces about feeling trapped, about breaking free, about being seen. One series, the one the gallery had chosen, was about Adam, about their morning conversations, about someone seeing her when she'd been invisible for so long. She titled it, The Man Who Saw Me. The gallery show approached. Grace was nervous, terrified, but also alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. She had her own place, her own art, her own voice, but at night, lying in her tiny studio apartment, she missed Adam terribly. She wondered if she'd imagined their connection, if those morning conversations had meant as much to him as they had to her. She wondered where he was, if he was safe, if he ever thought about her, and she wondered if she'd ever see him again. The gallery glowed with soft light and expensive wine. Opening night, Grace's opening night. She stood near the entrance in a simple black dress she'd bought herself. Not designer, not expensive, but hers. Chosen by her. For her. Her heart pounded, her palms were sweaty. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Every piece of art on these walls was a piece of her soul laid bare for strangers to judge. Critics walked through slowly. Some nodded approvingly. Others studied her work with that careful, neutral expression that could mean anything. A few whispered to each other, gesturing at specific pieces. Grace's art was raw, emotional, honest in ways that made her want to hide. Pieces about feeling invisible, about being trapped in a life that wasn't yours, about slowly disappearing until you couldn't remember who you'd been before. But one series stood out, dominated the main wall, 5 paintings, each one depicting morning conversations, a woman and a man, coffee cups, rain, connection. The placard read, "The Man Who Saw Me." Grace stared at those paintings, at the only physical reminder she had of Adam, of the man who disappeared without explanation, without goodbye. Grace? She turned, and her stomach dropped. Derek stood there, suit and tie, hair perfect. That confident smile that used to make her feel safe, but now just made her feel tired. "What are you doing here?" "I was wrong." He stepped closer, hands in pockets, casual, like he was discussing the weather. "Come home. We can work this out." Grace took a step back. "There's nothing to work out. I'm finally free." "Free?" Derek laughed, sharp, mocking. "Look at you. Tiny apartment, no security, struggling to make rent. This is freedom?" "Yes." Grace's voice was steady, certain. "It is." Derek shook his head, looked around at the gallery, at her art, at the life she'd built without him. "You'll come crawling back when reality hits, when the bills pile up, when this little dream falls apart." Grace met his eyes. "I'd rather struggle as myself than thrive as your puppet." Derek's face hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No, marrying you would have been the mistake." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned on his heel and left, angry, defeated. And Grace felt nothing. No regret, no doubt, just relief. She stood alone after he left, looking at her paintings, at The Man Who Saw Me, at the visual representation of the most important relationship in her life, with a man whose last name she'd never even known. Then someone approached from behind. Footsteps quiet on the polished floor. "You finally stopped hiding." Grace froze. That voice. She knew that voice. She turned slowly, and her breath caught. Adam stood before her, but not the Adam she remembered. This Adam wore an expensive tailored suit, charcoal gray, perfect fit. His face was clean-shaven, hair cut professionally. He looked successful, confident, healthy, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, were the same. "Adam?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand. You were homeless? Broken?" He stepped closer, that same gentle smile. "I was, until you showed me I was worth saving." Grace's mind was reeling, spinning. "Who are you really?" Adam took a breath. "My name is Adam Westfield." The name meant nothing to Grace, but the way he said it, with weight and history, meant everything. "I was the CEO of Westfield Capital Management, one of the largest investment firms on the West Coast." Grace's legs felt weak. "What?" "8 months ago, I had a complete breakdown." His voice was steady, but carried old pain. "I was managing billions of dollars, working 100-hour weeks. I had everything: money, power, status, and I was drowning." He paused, looking at her paintings, at the series about him. "I walked away from everything. My position, my money, my identity. I literally walked out of my corner office one day and never went back." "Why?" "Because I was drowning in success that meant nothing." Adam's voice cracked slightly. "I had everything and nothing at the same time. So I left." lived on the streets, tried to figure out who I was without the titles, without the money, without all the things I thought defined me. Grace could barely process what she was hearing. And I found you at my lowest point. Adam's eyes locked onto hers. You didn't see a CEO. You didn't see potential or opportunity. You saw a person, just a person who needed kindness. That changed everything. Tears were streaming down Grace's face now. Why did you leave? I looked for you. Every day I thought I left to get help. Real help. Adam stepped closer. I checked into a treatment facility, worked with a therapist, dealt with my demons, reconnected with my family. But this time I did it right, on my terms. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to rebuild properly. I started a small consulting firm, helping ethical businesses, using my skills for something meaningful. He smiled. I wanted to come back as someone worthy of you. Let's play a game. If you're truly watching and not just scrolling through comments, type "be yourself" in the comments below. Only those who made it this far will understand what happens next. You were always worthy, Grace whispered. Adam shook his head. I didn't believe that until you showed me. You gave coffee to a homeless man. You saw me, really saw me, when I was nothing, when I had nothing. You still saw me as human. He gestured to her paintings, to the man who saw me. And you showed me that I saw you too. The real you, the artist, the dreamer, the woman hiding inside a prison of someone else's expectations. Grace was crying fully now. I missed you every single day. I missed you too. Adam reached out, gently wiped tears from her cheek. I've been following your career. I saw the announcement about this show. I knew you'd do it. I never doubted you. I doubted myself. I know, but you did it anyway. That's courage, Grace. They stood there, two people who'd saved each other in the most unexpected way. In a city full of millions, they'd found each other at exactly the moment they both needed to be found. I see you, Adam said softly. I see you too, Grace replied. And for the first time in both their lives, they felt completely, utterly seen. Adam took a breath, his hand still on Grace's cheek. I came here tonight because I saw your name. I've been following your career. Grace's eyes widened. You knew about the show? I knew you'd do it. I never doubted you for a second. Fresh tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. I missed you every single day. I missed you too. Adam's voice was thick with emotion. But I needed to become someone who could stand beside you. Not as the broken man you saved. As your equal, as someone worthy of the incredible woman you are. You were always worthy, Adam. Maybe, but I didn't believe it. Not until I did the work. Not until I rebuilt myself from the ground up. He turned to look at the paintings behind them. The series. The Man Who Saw Me. 5 large canvases, each one depicting their morning conversations. Coffee cups steaming in the cold. Rain falling. 2 people connecting in ways that transcended circumstance. Raw, honest, beautiful. Is this? His voice caught. You, us. Grace stepped beside him, the only time I felt truly seen in years. Maybe in my entire life. Adam turned back to her, cupped her face in both hands. I see you, Grace. I've always seen you, the artist, the dreamer, the woman who gives kindness even when the world tells her not to. And I see you too. Grace's hands covered his. Not the CEO, not the homeless man, just Adam, just you. He kissed her, soft, then deeper, right there in the gallery, in front of the critics and patrons and everyone who'd come to see her work. People whispered, cameras flashed, someone applauded, but Grace and Adam didn't notice. They were too busy seeing each other. Finally, completely, without barriers or pretense or fear. 6 months later, Grace stood in her studio, not the tiny apartment she'd rented after leaving Derek. A real studio, space, light, room to create. Her art career was flourishing. Another solo show had just been announced. Critics were calling her a raw, emotional voice for a generation seeking authenticity. But right now, she was just painting, lost in color and movement in the pure joy of creation. Adam sat nearby, working on his laptop, running his consulting firm, helping businesses build ethical practices, using his skills for something meaningful. Simple domestic moment, but filled with love, with peace, with the quiet contentment of two people living authentic lives. Adam looked up from his screen, smiled. Remember when you brought me that first coffee? Grace set down her brush, turned to him. You looked at me like I was crazy. I was crazy. He stood, walked over to her. Crazy lucky that someone like you existed in the world. Grace leaned into him. We both needed saving, and we saved each other. Adam wrapped his arms around her, held her tight. They stood there, surrounded by her paintings, all of them about finding yourself, about being seen, about discovering that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Grace looked up at Adam. I love you. I love you too. Not because they needed each other, but because they chose each other every single day. Grace spent years being invisible, hiding who she was to fit someone else's vision of who she should be. She'd buried her dreams so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. Almost forgotten she existed. Then she helped a stranger, a homeless man shivering in a doorway on a cold Seattle morning. And that stranger became the only person who truly saw her, really saw her. Not the compliant fiancé, not the obedient partner, but the artist, the dreamer, the woman who'd been hiding in plain sight. Adam had lost everything, his identity stripped away, his titles and money and status gone. He'd had to become nothing to figure out who he was without all the things he thought defined him. Until Grace showed him that who you are matters infinitely more than what you have. That kindness is worth more than wealth. That being seen as human is the greatest gift anyone can offer. Sometimes the person who needs help is the one who helps you most. Sometimes a $5 coffee becomes the catalyst for transformation. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness creates the biggest change. And sometimes being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift anyone can give or receive. Grace and Adam didn't just save each other from loneliness or struggle or despair. They saved each other from lives that looked successful but felt empty, from identities that fit perfectly on paper but crushed their souls. They found each other at exactly the moment they both needed to be found. And they saw each other when the rest of the world had stopped looking. Because that's what love does. Real love. It sees you, all of you, the broken parts and the beautiful parts, the dreams you've buried and the fears you can't voice. And it says, I see you, and you're worth seeing. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Like you were living someone else's dream instead of your own? Or has someone truly seen you when everyone else looked away? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that being yourself is worth any struggle and that real love sees beneath every surface, subscribe to True Soul Narratives right now. We share powerful stories about love that recognizes your true self, the courage to break free from what doesn't serve you, and the transformative power of being genuinely seen. Don't miss our next story, because sometimes the stranger you help becomes the person who saves you. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply seeing someone for who they truly are.